Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. Question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, President Officer. The cost of living is hitting hard for people across Scotland, and John Swinney promised to help. So what did he do? Well, he's cutting income tax, but only for some, and by a maximum of £31.75 per year. That works out at 61 pence a week. That wouldn't even buy you a bag of peanuts. John Swinney's budget might even...
It's your tax cuts.
Let's carry on with our business.
Hamilton's entirely right. It wouldn't even buy you a bag of peanuts. John Swinney's budget might even have broken a world record because a Scottish Government tax advisor says, and I quote, that it may be the smallest tax cut in history. Does John Swinney really think his insulting tax cut will actually help Scotland's struggling households?
First Minister.
I'm pleased to see that the additions for the pantomime dame are being entered early by Rachel Hamilton in Parliament today, because that was frankly pantomime stuff from the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party has come forward with a proposition about tax cuts which would involve £1 billion worth of cuts in public expenditure, with not a scrap of detail about how that would be delivered. So that is a false proposition. However, my government has brought forward a range of measures which build on the existing cost of living support, such as free prescriptions, free eye tests, the free bus travel that's available in Scotland, with an expansion of support.
Can I just ensure that we can all hear one another? That would be helpful and, of course, necessary. First Minister.
With an expansion of support for breakfast clubs and additional investment in after-school activities, by the measures that have been taken through the Extra Time programme, by the increase in the Scottish Child Payment and the expansion of the Scottish Child Payment for babies under 1. And what that's a demonstration of is a government that is on the side of the people of Scotland, and I'm proud of the measures that we've set out in the budget on Tuesday.
Russell Finlay.
John Swinney gave these taxpayers a miserly cut, not to help anyone, but to get a cheap and easy headline. And for many others, income taxes will rise even further.
Hard workers, teachers.
And one of the reasons for John Swinney's tax raid is so that he can spend even more on benefits. Now, we value the safety net for those in genuine need. But the SNP's benefits bill is out of control, and it's now going to go up by another £650 million. I'll keep saying it, no matter how noisy they get, Scotland can't afford this. The Scottish Conservatives believe that taxes can't keep rising in order to fund higher spending on benefits. So why doesn't John Swinney understand that his reckless approach is unfair and unsustainable?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, nobody in Scotland takes seriously Russell Finlay's claim that the Conservative Party values the safety net of social security, because every week they come to this Parliament and attack social security expenditure that's keeping children out of poverty. Now, as a matter of fact, the updated Scottish Fiscal Commission forecasts show a substantial reduction in the Scottish Government's benefits investment over and above the block grant adjustments received from the United Kingdom Government. That demonstrates that the action the Scottish Government is taking is sustainable and is, as is demonstrated by the budget that we have put forward, as we have always undertaken since we formed the government. We bring forward costed financial programmes that are delivered for the people of Scotland, that deliver real benefits for the people of Scotland, and the Conservatives are unable to match the record for financial stewardship of this government and the support for the vulnerable in our country.
Russell Finlay.
We value social security, but we will always tell the truth about the SNP's out-of-control, unaffordable benefits bill. John Swinney's economic approach is ruinous. There is another way. The only way, responsible, credible and sustainable way to raise more revenue for public services is by growing Scotland's economy. And you achieve this by supporting those who create jobs and generate wealth. Yet Scottish businesses face tax rises of almost £300 million in the coming weeks. And their verdict on John Swinney's budget is damning. CBI Scotland calling it a missed opportunity. UK Hospitality Scotland saying it missed the mark spectacularly on business support. And the Federation of Small Businesses saying that ministers must urgently reconsider their approach to economic growth. So when will John Swinney learn that he's got to back business, not attack business?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I recognise the challenges that are always felt in the business community. I think of all the things I could be accused of, I've always been a member of the government who's had very close and active dialogue with the business community in Scotland. Now, the Scottish Government's budget for the forthcoming financial year will ensure the lowest basic property rate since 2018-19, and it will support business and communities with a package of reliefs worth an estimated £864 million in 26-27. That's before I get to the fact that one of the key asks from the business community was about increased support for the college sector. And the government has increased the college's budget by £70 million in the budget. And another call from the business community is support for infrastructure investment. And we set out our plans on infrastructure. And yesterday, the Transport Secretary...
Let's hear one another.
And yesterday, the Transport Secretary told Parliament about the delivery of the plans to dual the A9, one of the central economic pledges of this government. And at a time when unemployment is lower in Scotland than the rest of the United Kingdom, where GDP per capita has increased at a faster rate in Scotland than it has in the rest of the United Kingdom, this government delivers for the Scottish economy, and we're going to carry on doing so.
Russell Finlay.
He says he recognises the challenges facing businesses, but then decides to make them worse. For the avoidance of any doubt, the Scottish Conservatives will not back and cannot back a budget that does nothing to help Scotland's workers and businesses. Delivered by a Finance Secretary who's running for the hills, it hammers people with higher taxes to fund a bloated benefit system. It's absolutely mind-blowing that Labour and the other so-called opposition parties will let this SNP burach of a budget pass. It's a desperate budget that kills aspiration. It's a damaging budget that harms business. And it's a dishonest budget that will need to be fixed within months. It's the same old John Swinney. Don't the people of Scotland deserve lower taxes, fairer benefits and a government focused on economic growth?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, our budget delivers on the priorities of the people of Scotland, strengthening our National Health Service and supporting people and businesses with the challenges of the cost of living. In this budget, the Scottish Government is expanding the best package of cost of living support anywhere.
First Minister, sorry, I do know, Mr Kerr, that you share my view that we should always carry ourselves in a very parliamentary manner. I'd be grateful if you might demonstrate that, Mr Kerr. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, this budget delivers on the priorities of the people of Scotland, about strengthening our National Health Service, about supporting people and businesses with the cost of living. Thanks to our decisions, 55% of Scottish taxpayers are now expected to pay less income tax than if they lived in England. The people of Scotland have a government that is on their side, and all the current indications show that the people of Scotland want to have this government here for the long term to stay on their side.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney's 19th budget lacks ambition for Scotland, and it fails to deal with the structural issues created by this tired SNP government. They can only be resolved by changing the Scottish Government in May. Now, while he brags about his £6 a year tax cut for the lowest paid,
Let's hear Mr. Sarwar. Let's hear Mr. Sarwar.
While he brags about his £6 a year tax cut for the lowest paid, 1 million Scots, including nurses, teachers and police officers, face being forced to pay more, all while his government wastes billions. A tax cut worth 11p a week for the lowest earners, while thousands of nurses pay £400 more and thousands of teachers pay £600 more than they would in the rest of the UK. Even his own tax advisor says this is a political stunt. So why does John Swinney believe that someone earning £33,500 has the broadest shoulders and therefore should pay more tax in Scotland?
First Minister.
If I could explain to Mr Sarwar that a Band 6 nurse at the bottom of the scale will take home an additional £1,994 after tax compared to the same band in England. A qualified teacher at the bottom of the band will take home £6,365 more after tax in Scotland than the equivalent in England. So there are the facts for Mr Sarwar. For a Band 6 nurse living in Scotland will take home... Mr Sarwar asked me about nurses, and I'm giving him an answer about nurses. A Band 6 nurse at the bottom of the scale will take home an additional £1,994 because they live in Scotland, not England, and a teacher £6,365 more in Scotland than in England. That's because this government delivers fair pay for public service workers.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, John Swinney very deliberately focuses on the lowest band and ignores the thousands of nurses and teachers that are paying more tax here in Scotland. So while 1 million Scots face paying more, this 19th John Swinney budget doesn't even try and deal with the issues leading to billions of pounds being wasted and opportunities squandered. No plan to deal with delayed discharge, meaning taxpayers pick up a bill of £500 million. No plan to deal with Scotland's prison system, while people pay £1 billion and rising for the new Berlini in Glasgow. And no plan to grow Scotland's economy, costing us £800 million. All of those things can only come about with a change of government in May. And he can't solve the big issues he has created. But there
Let's hear one another.
But there is an urgent new one that risks the future of thousands of businesses. Why has there been no pause to business rate re-evaluations, meaning many businesses face a £400% increase, far greater than any rate relief, and risk their survival and the loss of thousands of jobs? Why has there been no pause to those re-evaluations?
First Minister.
I noticed that Mr Sarwar has moved the subject on from the tax position of teachers and nurses, because I have completely demolished the arguments that he's put in front of me today. Now, on the subject of business rates, the business rates position, of course, is a product of two elements: the independent valuation that is undertaken and the policy decisions taken by this government. So the independent valuation, which was agreed across Parliament, has taken its course. But in policy terms, this government has put in place a 15% relief to retail, hospitality and leisure premises liable for the basic or intermediate property rate in mainland Scotland. We've expanded 100% relief for retail and hospitality and leisure businesses on our islands. We've maintained the small business bonus scheme, and crucially, we have put in place a business rates package of reliefs worth an estimated £864 million in this forthcoming financial year. That is the government investing to support business, to support the economy, along with a range of other measures which I hope Mr Sarwar will support in the budget.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, in the words of his old pal Alec Neil, he's talking rubbish, because he's failed to deal with the serious question of re-evaluations.
Let's hear Mr Sarwar.
Re-evaluations that see some businesses being forced to pay 300% or 400% higher, risking the survival of those businesses, but he completely ignored the question. Now, the one bit of good news is that Scots don't have to put up with his failure for much longer, and in May they can choose a new government. Because the SNP have spent the last 19 years...
Sorry, Mr Sarwar. Somewhat noisy. Let's hear one another.
It's OK, we'll say cheerio to Shona Robertson in 4 months' time too, because the SNP have spent the last 19 years failing to deal with the real issues facing Scotland, and they have nothing new to deal with the crisis created on their watch. Nothing to deal with hundreds of thousands of Scots stuck on NHS waiting lists. Nothing to deal with drugs deaths emergency killing hundreds a year. Nothing to deal with the homelessness crisis that leaves 10,000 kids stuck in temporary accommodation, and nothing to help businesses, wages or the economy grow, and nothing for the thousands of our amazing young people missing out on the education they deserve. John Swinney has had 20 years. He's had his chance and he's failed, hasn't he?
First Minister.
I don't think today is the day for Mr Sarwar to be in a strong position to accuse me of talking rubbish. Absolutely. Because this morning, a campaigner, a health campaigner, has raised the fact publicly that she has requested from Mr Sarwar a formal apology after a campaign leaflet, which I have in front of me, was posted to thousands and thousands of homes around the country with a false quotation in support of his party in the leaflet. And the campaigner, who was falsely quoted, asked a fair question. If they've written that out of nowhere, what else have they lied about? So I don't think Mr Sarwar is in a position to say to me anything about the budget, because not only has he misled the public in a campaign leaflet which a member of the public has called out, Mr Sarwar is wrestling with reform to try to get into second place in the opinion polls this morning. Mr Sarwar knows that it's all over, it's finished, the dream is gone, he's in opposition and we're going to stay in government.
Question number 3, Gillian Mackay.
The First Minister's government has long aspired to Scotland being an independent Nordic nation, but right now our Nordic neighbours need our help. Yesterday in the White House, Donald Trump repeated his threat to, in his words, conquer Greenland. This is no empty threat and comes directly off the back of his immoral and illegal invasion of Venezuela. Scotland must stand up to Trump and his contempt for international law and reassure the people of Greenland that we will not be complicit in any part of an attempted annexation. So can the First Minister commit to ensuring that the United States military will be banned from using Scottish infrastructure and assets, including all of our publicly owned airports, if they launch operations against our Nordic allies?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I acknowledge the importance of the issues and the concern that Gillian Mackay raises with me today. And as I have made clear over the course of the last couple of weeks, but actually as I've made clear over the entirety of my political life, I believe fundamentally in the international rules-based system for ensuring peace and stability within the world. And as I expressed about the situation in Venezuela, and as I put on the record last week in response to Mercedes v Alba, I did not believe that the intervention in Venezuela could be justified within the international rules-based system. Now, obviously, there is Gillian Mackay raises issues with me about the use of infrastructure within Scotland that is under the control of the Scottish Government. And I want to make it clear that I believe it is important that all of that infrastructure, if it were ever to be used, can only be used consistent with the international rules-based system for the arrangements between countries, and I will ensure that is the case as First Minister.
Gillian Mackay.
First Minister, it's not good enough for us to be vague on this. This is a US government who are pulling their own citizens out of their communities, have shot a mother in broad daylight and are actively advertising that they want to invade other countries. And people across the world are terrified. And
Let's hear Ms Mackay. Mr Kerr, I'm chairing the Parliament at the moment, thank you. Ms Mackay.
People across the world are terrified, and we have the ability to take action. So again, First Minister, will you stop US military using all publicly owned Scottish airports if they launch operations in Greenland and stand with the international community?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I absolutely stand with the international community on the resolute views that have been expressed about the situation in Greenland, about protecting the status of Greenland and the right of the people of Greenland to determine their own future. I state that unreservedly to Parliament. And what I also say, and I will say it again in the hope that I can express this clearly to the public and to Parliament, I will insist that the infrastructure that is under the control of the Scottish Government can and should only be used to support the international rules-based system, because that is the foundation of peace that I've enjoyed throughout my life, and which I want to make sure is the case for my children and my grandchildren.
Thank you. Question number 4, Keith Brown.
To ask the First Minister whether he will provide an update regarding the Scottish Government's latest engagement with the UK Government in relation to the distribution of local growth fund allocations in Scotland.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, despite repeated requests over the past year, we've had no meaningful discussion with the UK Government on the Local Growth Fund. The Secretary of State for Scotland wrote to us on the day of the announcement, stating that UK Government officials would be in contact, but we have no more detail on this programme, and this announcement has come far too late. The Scottish Government and local authorities repeatedly warned the UK Government that any reduction in funding would have a devastating impact, and we now see this with reports of some organisations issuing redundancy notices. This programme does not come close to matching the Shared Prosperity Fund that it will replace, and leaves 9 Scottish local authorities with no allocation whatsoever.
Keith Brown.
I thank the First Minister for his answer, and you'll be aware that in Wales, the Labour Government will decide how to spend £547 million of local growth funding, whereas in Scotland it appears the UK Government intends to spend Scotland's £140 million for us. At the same time, analysis shows that Forth Valley, which includes my constituency, faces a cut of around a third compared with current funding levels, threatening employability, skills and business support programmes that sustain local jobs. In my constituency, local groups will lose jobs. Does the First Minister agree that this represents blatant political bias, with Scotland's communities not only shortchanged — I don't know why the Tories don't like that being raised, but this represents blatant political bias, with Scotland's communities not only shortchanged, but denied the right to decide their own priorities, and that while Labour politicians in Wales are defending devolution, they called Starmer's approach a constitutional outrage, it's time for Labour MSPs in this chamber to do the same, or accept that Scotland will be far better served by a Scottish Parliament with the full powers of independence.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, there are two issues that I'd want to address in what Mr Brown has raised with me. The first is the fact that in the quantum of support that's available, the resources available in Scotland are dwarfed by those that are available in Wales. So there is no equity in the arrangements that have been put in place. The second point is that in Wales, where there is a Labour administration, the UK Labour government has decided to allocate that money to the Welsh Government to enable distribution to take place in a complementary way to the priorities of the Welsh Government. And I think that's a rational and logical position to adopt. In Scotland, the Labour Government has engaged in no dialogue with us whatsoever about the delivery of this funding, and it is being deployed in a way chosen by the UK Government with no regard to the priorities that are democratically agreed by this Parliament. And worse than all of that, people in Scotland are losing jobs just now because of the decisions of a Labour government. And when you add that to the decisions about employers' national insurance contributions, what that shows is the Labour government is costing Scotland's jobs. We can't afford to have any more control from Labour in Scotland.
Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, Clackmannanshire has just received £9.8 million of investment through the Local Growth Fund. This money came from the UK Government, as already has been allocated and discussed. It came openly, transparently and in partnership with local leaders. In contrast, your own 26-27 budget has been called misleading and not good enough by the Institute of Fiscal Studies. So can I ask the First Minister, who's to blame for the flattering figures identified by the Institute of Fiscal Studies and the Fraser-Valley Institute? Is it the Cabinet Secretary for Finance or yourself, First Minister?
First Minister.
Well, I think we're going to have some consistency on the Conservative benches, because Alexander Stewart has turned up here and he's spoken to Parliament as an advocate, a cheerleader for the Labour government in London, when his party leader is denouncing the Labour government in London. I think the Conservatives have got to get their act together. Or should I say, those that are left, because many of them are getting chucked out because they're dabbling with reform. It's all over for the Tory party.
Question number 5, Douglas Ross.
To ask the First Minister for what reason the Scottish Government is going to court to continue to allow it to house male prisoners in the female prison estate, in light of any projections it has made of the cost to taxpayers in Scotland of challenging the Supreme Court ruling in this way.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the judgment of the Supreme Court is accepted by the Scottish Government. What we are doing, as any responsible government must, is ensuring our policies comply with all of our legal obligations, including the Scotland Act and the European Convention on Human Rights. Every key area of government which is or may be affected by the Supreme Court judgment is carrying out assessments across legislation, guidance and policies, and in some areas changes have already been made. The prisons guidance has not been changed, and it can be taken from that the Scottish Government has concluded that it does not need to be changed in light of the Supreme Court judgment. For Women Scotland has brought proceedings challenging that conclusion, as they are entitled to do so. The matter is now before the court. The Scottish Government has to make difficult decisions which balance the interests and rights of individuals, often in complex situations, and this is one such situation.
Douglas Ross.
I'm not allowed to call the First Minister a liar, but that answer was not truthful. Well, I've just said I'm not allowed to do it, but he's not giving a truthful answer. It is desperate stuff from the First Minister. How on earth can he stand up here and say the government is respecting the Supreme Court ruling when it's in court arguing the very opposite? And First Minister, these actions threaten women's safety. Right now, at this very moment, there are 3 biological males housed in Scotland's female prison estate. Alex Stewart was jailed for 19 years for murder after stabbing his victim 16 times in the chest. Melissa Young was jailed for 20 years for murder and left his victim with 29 injuries from multiple stab wounds. And Paris Green was jailed for 18 years for torture and murder. He recently assaulted a female member of staff, but has still not been moved to a male prison. So let me ask the First Minister this. These evil killers are all housed with women prisoners. Are they male or female?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I indicated in my earlier answer, the Scottish Government has got to ensure that on all occasions our policies comply with our legal obligations, including the Scotland Act and the European Convention on Human Rights. So in these situations, the Government has got to wrestle with complex situations and make difficult decisions that balance and reflect the
Let's hear the First Minister.
The interests and rights of individuals. Now, this is a matter that is actively in front of the courts at this time. Now, the Scottish ministers appreciate the public interest in this case, and in the particular circumstances of this case, and in the interests of open justice, the Government will publish our written case, that being our answers to the judicial review and our note of argument, ahead of the hearing due to begin on the 3rd of February. Making the materials lodged with the court publicly available will allow anyone with an interest to follow in a well-informed way what is said in court. I stress this is a matter that is actively in front of the court, and the Government is trying to make information available to ensure that members of the public can follow the case in a well-informed way.
I call Ruth Maguire.
Presiding Officer, the need for protection of space for women who sit at board tables has been accepted and the law corrected. But a policy that means female prisoners, a majority of whom have experienced male violence, may have to share close quarters with male-bodied inmates while in the care of the state is being defended. Knowing everything that we do about trauma, given the countless testimonies by women on this matter, including both privately and publicly by a number of his own party colleagues, does the First Minister understand just how appalling the Government's actions feel to many of us, and how difficult it is to reconcile the Scottish Government's words on the protection of single-sex spaces for females with their actions on this matter?
First Minister. Thank you. Thank you.
President, I acknowledge and understand and appreciate the strength of feeling that is expressed to me by Ruth Maguire. And I understand that, and I understand the views and the points that she makes and that she expresses on behalf of those who have had traumatic experiences. But I stress what I said in my earlier answer. The judgment of the Supreme Court is accepted by the Scottish Government. What we are doing is ensuring that our policies comply with all of our legal obligations, including the Scotland Act and the European Convention on Human Rights, and the Government is obliged to ensure that that is the case. And we have considered this issue, and the actions that we are taking are consistent with that consideration.
Pauline McNeill.
So the Government claim that they do accept the Supreme Court ruling on the definition of women in the Equality Act, but I'm not certain that they do. And to be honest, I am not sure the First Minister fully understands the impact that this is having, because they have chosen to advance an argument in court that a blanket ban on housing trans women in the women's estate may violate their human rights under the European Convention on Human Rights. So what consideration did the Government give to the human rights of female prisoners to serve their sentence with dignity and safety from male-bodied prisoners? So I asked the First Minister today, in the likely event that the Government will lose this court case in the light of the Supreme Court judgment, when will the Government soon after comply with this judgment, and will that policy be changed as a matter of urgency?
First Minister.
Pauline McNeill indicated that questioned the Government's acceptance of the Supreme Court judgment. And I want to say once again the Government accepts unreservedly the Supreme Court judgment. As a consequence, we have revised policy guidance that is in place in other areas of policy to ensure compatibility with the Supreme Court judgment. In the case of the guidance on prisoners, the government has made an assessment and that is now being tested in the courts, and the issue will be determined by the courts. And out of the respect that I have for the decision-making in the courts, I want to make sure the court is free to make its judgment on the application of the guidance that the government has put in place.
Question number 6, Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to findings published by the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow, indicating that a majority of clinicians anticipate practical challenges in implementing the Assisted Dying for Terminally Ill Adults Scotland Bill.
Thank you. I have to say I'm somewhat disconcerted that we don't have a live audio-video feed for Ms Duncan-Glancy. I'll let this question go ahead in this instance until we seek to resolve this issue. First Minister.
President, the Scottish Government is aware of the findings of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow detailing their members' views on assisted dying legislation. Similar to the College's own position, the Scottish Government maintains a position of neutrality on the bill. Our Stage 2 assessment on non-government amendments to the bill, focusing on the technical, legal and delivery aspects, was in part informed by the evidence stakeholders provided to the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee, and we continue to pay close attention to stakeholder views.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I do hope that the technical issues have resolved themselves. I thank the First Minister for that answer. As MSPs, it is important that we listen to experts, including those who will be tasked with implementing any change in the law. In this case, those who will be helping people to die. So can I ask the First Minister, does he agree with me that if those experts tell us that it could be unsafe and inoperable, we should listen to them?
First Minister.
President, as I indicated in my earlier answer, the Government is neutral on this bill. It is a matter of conscience and personal decision-making, I think, for all members of Parliament on this question. My own views of opposition to this bill are well known publicly and expressed, and it will be up to individual members to assess the points that are expressed by a variety of stakeholders as Parliament considers this important bill.
Liam MacArthur.
Thank you. As the First Minister will recall, Parliament voted to support the general principles of my bill at stage 1, since when both the Scottish and UK governments have worked constructively to ensure a comprehensive system of assisted dying can be implemented if that remains the will of MSPs, and I put on record my thanks to both of them for those efforts. At this point, however, can the First Minister assure the Chamber that the Scottish Government will now engage at stage 3 on any amendments they believe would be necessary to deliver a safe and compassionate choice for terminally ill adults in Scotland who wish it?
First Minister.
President, the Government is actively considering this issue, and obviously the Government has to be mindful of the position, which will be sustained during the bill, that it has a neutral position on the bill. I acknowledge that there will be technical, practical, operational and legislative questions that the Government will be called upon to engage with, and that issue is under active consideration within Government at this time. But I stress that there will be a multiplicity of issues that have to be wrestled with, and the Government will give consideration to those questions in good faith.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries. I'd be grateful for concise questions and responses. I call Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. First Minister will be aware of the outbreaks of avian flu at Glenrath Farm in my constituency, the largest egg producer in Scotland, 1 million eggs a day. Thousands of birds have been culled and all the Glenrath eggs and the shells have been recalled. Can I therefore ask the First Minister for an update on the contamination security measures at that site, and at the risk of reprising the infamous Edwina Curry egg panic, an assurance that the eggs on shelves now, given that recall, are safe?
First Minister.
President, we are aware of a cluster of outbreaks of the halopathogenic avian influenza H5N1 in the Scottish borders. Food safety is a matter for the Food Standards Agency. Public Health Scotland advises, and this is the point that Christine Graham is asking me about, advises that the risk to public health from the virus is very low, and that Food Standards Scotland advises that avian influenza pose a very low food safety risk for consumers. Properly cooked poultry and poultry products, including eggs, are safe to eat on the advice of Public Health Scotland. But I also assure Christine Graham that there are rigorous safety measures in place to monitor the condition of different sites, and that is what has highlighted the issues that are faced in the borders.
Rachel Hamilton.
Presiding Officer, on Saturday I will meet with over 40 community councils at an energy convention in the Borders. They feel voiceless because monster pylons and other infrastructure industrialise the Borders countryside without a clear plan from the SNP government. An invitation was sent to your Energy Minister, Gillian Martin, nearly a month ago with no response received. And now we learn that she's abdicated responsibilities for consents to another SNP minister. Does this chaos not prove your energy strategy is confused, incoherent and failing communities? First Minister, could you personally guarantee that these communities will receive a response from Gillian Martin by the end of the day?
Always through the chair, please. First Minister.
President Officer, obviously ministerial invitations will be considered and judgments arrived at as to whether it's appropriate for ministers to be undertaking these issues. In relation to the determination of applications, a decision has been taken that Ivan McKee will determine applications given his wider planning responsibilities, and the importance of those approaches has been taken. And what I would say to Rachel Hamilton is the Government is absolutely committed to ensuring that Scotland's enormous renewable energy wealth is utilised for the benefit of the people of Scotland, and I look forward to making more progress on that when Scotland is able to exercise the powers of independence to lower fuel bills by putting Scotland's energy wealth to work for the people of Scotland.
Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's understood that the tanker seized by the US authorities last week is currently in Scottish waters, and I understand from reports that the First Minister was not briefed on this by the UK Government. So can the First Minister provide an update on what the Scottish Government's understanding is of the current situation with regard to the seized tanker?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, as Audrey Nicholl has recounted, the Government was not advised that this vessel was coming into Scottish waters, and I think it's pretty obvious that when such an event happens, there could well be implications for the exercise of Scots law and Scots jurisprudence when a vessel of this type comes into Scottish waters. And I think, and I've raised this with the United Kingdom Government, my complete dissatisfaction at the absence of prior notice that this was going to be undertaken because of the potential interaction with our responsibilities. As one example of all of that, the Lord Advocate is currently seeking to establish that all aspects of the rule of law are being respected by the presence of this tanker in Scottish waters, which is her statutory responsibility as Lord Advocate, and also to be assured that the health and the welfare of those on board are preserved. So I think this, as an example of the total absence of proper formal communication from the United Kingdom Government to the Scottish Government about an issue that has implications for our delivery of our responsibilities. This is a shockingly poor example of the conduct of the United Kingdom Government.
Finlay Carson.
First Minister, my constituents are deeply alarmed that Dumfries and Galloway's Integrated Health Board plans to end Alzheimer's Scotland's commissioned dementia support on the 31st of March. Changes they fear will seriously harm the care of 373 people currently supported, including 235 in the guaranteed year of post-diagnostic support. I'm aware that you've recently been heavily engaged in looking at the future of dementia support through your Advanced Dementia Roundtable work, precisely to avoid changes made without proper consultation. Will you instruct your officials to engage urgently with the Health and Social Care Partnership and IGB in Dumfries and Galloway to secure and make public a dated continuity plan with a single family contact, name leads and a to-pay consultation timetable, and commit government, if required, to give support, including bridging arrangements, so there will be no cliff edge in April?
I'll remind members of the requirement to speak through the chair. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I think Mr Carson makes a series of reasonable points. I'd be very pleased to convene the roundtable on Alzheimer's care, suggested to me by one of Scotland's leading and most distinguished industrialist Sir Ian Anderson, and I welcome Sir Ian's intervention to advance these issues and also the active participation of clinicians. Mr Carson makes a strong point about the early intervention support that Alzheimer's Scotland make, particularly in a community setting, which I suspect must be the context of the arrangements in Mr Carson's constituency. So I give him the assurance that I will take this issue away and explore it with the Health Secretary to see what steps we can take to ensure there is continuity of service, because it is very obvious that any disruption to the care arrangements of individuals with Alzheimer's is likely to be damaging to those individuals.
Alistair Allen.
Can I welcome the announcement in this week's Scottish Budget of a mansion tax on properties valued at over £1 million? While I'm sure not singled out, it seems likely that the new leader in Scotland of Mr Farage's party will be among the first to pay this. So, does the First Minister agree that it's fair to ask the wealthiest to contribute to public services, and that it will be good to see certain figures in the House of Lords doing so more evidently?
First Minister.
The Government has a foundation to its tax approach which is based on the progressive principle, and we have taken that principle and applied it to the council tax provisions at the higher end of the spectrum, and those policies will be brought forward as part of the Government's budget process.
Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Latest COPFS figures show a 43% post-COVID rise in under-16s reported for rape and sexual assault. There is a crisis of violence against women and girls in Scotland. What we are currently doing is not working. So I'm going to ask the Government, will they please do something different and start at what the Lord Advocate has described as root cause offending, the violence against women of prostitution. Prostitution dehumanises women and girls, and this human rights abuse is currently state-sanctioned. So will the Government take this opportunity to stand up for women and girls and protect them and support my unbuyable bill?
First Minister.
First of all, I acknowledge unreservedly the significance of the issue that Ash Regan puts to me, and particularly the significant increase in sexual violence and the reporting of sexual violence within our society. And that's evidenced in a lot of the data that we have wrestled with in Parliament, and has resulted in the actions of the Government in ensuring that we have more cases being pursued, more prosecutions being taken to court, and more prosecutions being successfully achieved. But that is not in any way to suggest that there is not more that we need to do, which is about education and about advice and intervention to create a different culture in the attitude towards women and girls within our society, which of course is being fuelled by so much of the unacceptable material that is floating around on social media, in which the United Kingdom Government, I welcome some of the steps the UK Government has taken in the course of this week alone to apply greater regulatory force to many of these questions. Now, Ash Regan asked me specifically about her bill. The bill is at stage 1 consideration, and the Government has engaged in that bill, and we will obviously listen with care to the conclusions of the committee when that report is available to us.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. Point of order, Keith Brown.
Sir, in relation to the question which I raised during First Minister's questions, a supplementary question from Alexander Stewart contained a statement that Clackmannanshire has received £9 million or more. The truth is, of course, that Clackmannanshire has not received a single penny. I think he may be confused with the award said to be given to the whole of Forth Valley rather than Clackmannanshire. It's also true that the money has not been paid yet, will not be paid for several months. It's also true the UK Government has allocated it to something called the Forth Valley Regional Partnership, a body which does not actually exist. Given the importance of these facts for jobs in my constituency, I wonder if Alexander Stewart can be given the opportunity to apologise for his error in order that the facts can be put onto the official report.
Thank you, Mr Brown. You will be aware that the content of members' contributions is not a matter that the Chair would ordinarily rule on. Thank you. I'll move on to Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Chamber will be aware of reporting by Alice Faulkner at Clyde One News that a campaign leaflet issued by Labour features a made-up quote incorrectly attributed to maternity campaigner Claire Fleming, a quote she has publicly denied saying.
Mr Stewart, if I may, points of order should refer to whether proper procedures have or are being followed.
I'm coming into the parliamentary aspect of this, Presiding Officer. Despite promising on multiple occasions, if found out, I note that Mr Sarwar has yet to issue a public apology to Ms Fleming. Blatant disinformation of this type undermines trust in politicians, our politics and this very Parliament. And while you, as Presiding Officer, are not responsible for the output of members in a political space, fabricating quotes from members of the public has repercussions way beyond that political space and has serious potential for this very institution to be brought into disrepute. Can you outline, Presiding Officer, how members can ensure the accuracy of our output, both inside and outside this chamber? And will Anas Sarwar take this opportunity to put his full apology to Claire Fleming on the parliamentary record?
Thank you, Mr Stewart. As I indicated, this is not a matter for the Chair, but of course members should strive to be accurate always. Thank you. We conclude First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a members' business debate in the name of Maggie Chapman, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the gallery, the public gallery and the chamber to do so.